All right, today we're tackling one of the biggest ideas in government, what I like to call the three-branch solution. It's all about how to build a government that's safer and more stable for everyone. And to get it, we have to start with a really fundamental puzzle.
So here's the big question, right? A government needs to have enough power to actually get things done, to keep order and serve the people. But how do you stop that exact same power from turning around and becoming a threat? That's the tightrope we're going to walk today.
Before we can even talk about the solution, we've got to get a really good handle on the problem itself. And honestly, it all boils down to one word: power.
At its core, what's a government's job? It's to keep things from flying into chaos, so we can all live our lives safely and have our needs met. Doesn't matter if it's a tiny town or a huge country, that's the goal. But to pull that off, it needs one very important tool.
And yep, that tool is power. But here's the thing you can never forget. That power doesn't just come from nowhere. It comes from the people. The only reason a government has any authority is because we, the people, agree to give it that authority. It's what makes the whole thing run, but it can also be pretty dangerous stuff.
So what's the alternative to spreading power out? Well, you could just centralize it. Put one person or a small committee in charge of everything. And hey, it might sound efficient, but it comes with a massive risk. What happens when that one person decides to use all that power for themselves instead of for the people?
And that exact danger is what led to this really ingenious solution. A system that's built not on hoarding power, but on splitting it up.
This big idea is called the separation of powers, and it's a pretty simple concept when you get right down to it. Instead of one group doing all the work, you chop up the government's duties into different, distinct parts. It's kind of like a company that has a marketing department, a sales department, and an accounting department. Everybody has their own specific job to do.
But why go to all that trouble? Well, the entire point of this design is to stop any single part of the government from getting way too powerful and starting to abuse its authority. When you spread the power out, you create a natural system of checks and balances. It's a built-in safety feature.
So, what does this actually look like in practice? Well, the most common version of this system works like a three-person team. So let's meet the players. The classic model takes all that government power and divides it into three co-equal branches. And notice, this isn't a pyramid with a boss at the top. It's a balanced setup where they all work alongside each other. Here's how their jobs break down. First, you've got the legislative branch. They're the ones who make the laws. Then there's the executive branch. They're the ones who enforce those laws. And finally, you have the judicial branch, which interprets the laws, making sure they're applied fairly. Make, enforce, interpret. Three clear jobs.
And they really are supposed to work like a team. When the lawmaker, the enforcer, and the interpreter are all doing their part and working together, the entire government can serve its citizens a whole lot better and a whole lot more fairly.
Now, you might think this is some kind of modern invention, but it's not at all. Get this. The whole idea of separating government powers actually goes all the way back to ancient Greece and was developed even more by the Romans. It's a time-tested fix for a problem that's as old as time itself.
So you've got these different branches, each with its own job. But how do you make sure everyone actually stays in their own lane? Well, for that, you need a rulebook.
And that's the next logical question, right? If you're going to split up all this power, you have to write down exactly who is supposed to do what. You can't just run a country on a handshake deal and hope for the best.
And that official rulebook is the Constitution. This is the foundational document, the master blueprint for the entire government. You might hear it called a charter or a code of law, but the purpose is exactly the same.
So what does a constitution actually do? Well, it spells everything out. It defines the government's main responsibilities, it draws those clear lines between the branches, it sets up the basic laws of the country, and, this is a huge one, it explains the rights that belong to the citizens. At the end of the day, the Constitution is the supreme authority. It's the guide that all three branches have to look to and have to obey. It's the thing that makes sure the separation of powers isn't just a nice idea, it's the law.
Okay, so we've looked at the problem, the solution, and the rulebook. But so what? Why does any of this actually matter to us in our everyday lives? Let's bring it all home.
Look, this whole system isn't just some abstract idea from a civics class. It is a practical, real-world design with one primary goal: to protect the rights and freedoms of the people by stopping power from being abused. It's a safety mechanism built right into the heart of government.
So if you want to boil it all down, the logic goes like this. Number 1, a government needs power to do its job. 2, putting all that power in one place is dangerous. 3, the best way to prevent that danger is to separate the power. And 4, you write a constitution to make those rules official and permanent.
And that leaves us with one last crucial question to think about. If this system is so important for protecting our freedom, what are the warning signs that it might be getting weaker? What should we all be looking out for when the lines between these branches start to get blurry or the balance of power just starts to feel a little off? That's something worth keeping in mind.